Joining us now, Glenn Kessler. He's fact checker for the Washington Post. He joins us now from the paper's newsroom downtown. Glenn, good to have you with us. Thanks very much for your time.
Glad to be with you.
A lot of the recent controversy, it seems, flows from the interview that Secretary Clinton gave to Chris Wallace on Fox a couple Sundays ago. Can you explain why her statements in that conversation were so problematic?
Well, what she did is she essentially put words in the mouth of the FBI director, James Comey. As you may recall, James Comey, when he announced that he was not going to pursue any kind of criminal prosecution of the former Secretary of State, he had given a pretty tough description and criticism of her handling of the email situation, particularly setting up a private server. He noted that more than 100 emails were either marked classified or were retroactively classified. And he said it was showed poor judgment. And what she did on the Sunday show was, and then she did it in another interview later, was essentially saying the FBI director said that all of my public statements were true, which was not the case. He said she didn't lie to the FBI. Lying to the FBI would be a criminal matter. She said he didn't lie to the FBI. He specifically said he couldn't make a statement about her public comments. And what she kind of tried to do was say, well, what I told him in private to the FBI was similar to what I've said publicly, so therefore, ergo, and so on and so forth. And she had later admitted that that was a rather poor way of putting it.
And then in session she had with journalists at NABJ and NAHJ just the other day, she was forced to acknowledge, and her phrasing here was interesting, she said that she short-circuited an answer. That was in reference to the Fox encounter? Sometimes it can be hard to keep it all straight.
Yes, that was a reference to the way she phrased it on Fox as well as on a local TV show. She said she short-circuited it, which meant she short-circuited the answer. As I said, essentially, in a strange way, she was acknowledging that she put words in the FBI director's mouth. Because the FBI director, when asked about her public statements, emphatically said, I can't make a judgment on that. I can only say we concluded she did not lie to us. And then when he was specifically asked, well, she says in public she didn't, have classified information. Is that correct? He said, no, that's false. He went through a series of answers where he said this was not correct.
It seems like we've got several different barrels from which controversy is arising. We have probably the biggest issue of all of them, which is whether classified information was communicated via email on a system that wasn't a government system. Not to say that government systems are foolproof, but it's, the rules are pretty clear on what sorts of email systems officials should be using. So we have the issue of whether classified information was mishandled. That seems to be the big barrel. Then we have her statements about what James Comey, the FBI director, said, and we have a smaller barrel, I guess, in terms of the statements she has made referring to prior statements she's given. All of this is creating a ton of confusion, and critics have clearly seized on inconsistency, even though this is not a gotcha. This is not she doesn't see coming 100 miles away. Everyone who has the opportunity to sit down with her in any sort of journalistic encounter is going to pursue this, and they have.
Right. Well, I think what's happening here is that she made some pretty definitive statements when the email controversy first arose about a year and a half ago. And what she's been trying to do since then is maintain that that initial statement was consistent and correct. And it's kind of like trying to put a square peg in a round hole, because in that initial statement she said there was no emails that were sent that were marked classified. And in fact, actually, she may have didn't even use the word marked. She may have said classified. Now it turns out there were some emails that later agencies, when they're looking at it, said, well, really, this should be considered classified information. There were some that had some markings. Now, James Comey has said maybe she wasn't sophisticated enough to understand what those markings would have been. But at the same time, someone in her position should have known that the information that was being discussed probably should not have been used in an unclassified setting. I mean, just to make it clear, this was an unclassified system, and there is an unclassified system at the State Department. There's also a classified system. And Comey did determine there was no intentional mishandling of classified information. As this situation unfolded, different agencies, particularly the CIA and the Defense Department, have decided that the way the State Department handles sensitive information in unclassified settings is really not appropriate. So it was also a broader State Department problem that has been surfaced here, beyond the root of the problem, which is Hillary Clinton's decision to have a private server for her emails rather than use the State Department.